Yo, what is up, everybody? This is Jesse Williams from the Dads in Timeout podcast. And I just decided that I would shoot a video and probably post it on YouTube and give y'all the link on Twitter and just talk about some things. I haven't been able to get behind the microphone and do an actual podcast, but I hate not giving y'all content. Been talking a lot about college lately, and I really want to get into the NBA. It's my favorite sport. I know the draft is coming up, and so there's just a lot going on. But and I heard somebody say on Twitter that the NBA is really boring right now because LeBron James is hurt and Joel Embiid's hurt, and I don't know what they're following, but the NBA is ridiculous right now. So you've got the Eastern Conference, which, given the bottom of the Eastern Conference is a dud, which it always is, but you've got Philadelphia, the Nets, and Brooklyn sitting up at the top. Miami just got Victor Oladipo, which I think is a pretty good move if they ever get their act together. And then you got Boston sitting there around the 7-8 seed with the Knicks. And let's be honest, the Knicks aren't doing anything in the playoffs. I mean, it's a good story. Tom Thibodeau's doing a great job coaching that team. They've got a brighter future than they've had, but their best player is Julius Randle. And no shot to Julius Randle, but he's not the best player on a contending team. Now, if that Quickly guy ends up being really good and R.J. Barrett, who's already really good, then we're talking about something. So the Knicks are a few years away. We'll see what they can do. But just remember, when you talk about the Knicks, that James Dolan still owns the Knicks. They're still having issues with legends at Madison Square Garden having issues, from Charles Oakley to Patrick Ewing to who's the dude on the sideline that makes the movie? Spike Lee. And no disrespect to Spike Lee, I get these brain farts sometimes where I can't remember people's names. So I still have it in my brain that the Knicks are going to find a way to mess this up. But in the East, I mean, the Bucks have been really good lately. Drew Holiday just got a huge extension, I think $160 million. I'm shooting this on my phone, so I can't really look up stuff on my phone while I'm shooting the video. So I'm kind of just flying from the hip on this video. And so the Bucks are interesting. You got Drew Holiday, Chris Middleton, and Giannis. And I posed this question on Twitter earlier about whether or not Mike Budenholzer would get fired if the Milwaukee Bucks got bounced, let's say, in the second round. Now, I'm not wishing for any of these guys, any of these coaches who work really, really, really hard to lose their jobs. I don't wish for people to get fired unless you do something worth losing your job, and we'll get to a story about that pretty quickly. It might be a little later. I'm not even sure if I want to talk about it. Just look up Paul Pierce IG video. And we may cover that, we may not. I haven't decided yet. And so the Milwaukee Bucks, Mike Budenholzer, if you remember in 2015, he coached the Hawks, got them to the Eastern Conference Finals, and they got swept by the Cavaliers. I don't know if you can really blame him, because that team was basically, Kyle Korver, Al Horford, Jeff Teague, and there were some other guys on that team that I know I'm leaving out. But the Hawks overachieved. Mike Budenholzer probably overcoached, and I mean that in a good way, but he probably coached that team to be as good as they were with his system. But the problem is they figure out the Bucks in the playoffs. I think the addition of Drew Holiday helps. I don't really know what PJ Tucker brings to that team. The Bucks do have a hard time against the three. They allow a bunch of threes, a high shooting percentage from three, so that's a problem. So the Bucks are all about the postseason. We don't really care if they win the next 20 games in a row. We're going to be like, okay, cool, what are y'all going to do in the playoffs? The Nets are getting Kevin Durant back. Kyrie Irving's still in and out of the lineup. There's vehicles in the background. I apologize for the noise. I'm outside my job. I'm on lunch break. So the Nets are always interesting. James Harden has a legitimate MVP case. I just want to see that team play together in the finals. They're scary. I mean, I know they have LaMarcus Aldridge and Blake Griffin, but that team doesn't add any real outside threat with those additions. I think it actually hurts them in the fact that I thought that their bench had been, and their role players had actually been playing really well. Now, obviously, Kevin Durant hasn't been there. So my biggest question about the Nets all season has been, okay, especially when they got James Harden. So, okay, like, when all three of the dudes are on the court, like, what are the role players going to look like? I mean, Joe Harris is playing crazy, but Kevin Durant's been out of the lineup. Kyrie's out of the lineup, so he's getting more time. Are those role players going to be able to be ready in that role when they're not getting as many touches, a la the Cavaliers players next to LeBron, even though I think this Nets team's better. Also, with Nick Claxton, is his playing time going to go down? Bruce Brown, I hope that's that dude's first name. But are these role players, are they going to be able to be in rhythm when their roles diminish? Because obviously you have the three-headed monster in Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and James Harden. And even though Harden's, passing the ball a lot and leading the league in assists, he still has the ball in his hands. So there's still only a 24-second shot clock. And that'll be interesting. And I'm not saying the Nets can't do it. The Nets could very well win the championship. But is Kevin Durant going to stay healthy? The last time he had an injury and he came back, he worsened the injury. And I hope that doesn't happen. And so we'll see how that plays out. The 76ers got Embiid back. I think that Dwight Howard's a good addition for them off the bench. Obviously that happened in the offseason. And I haven't really paid too much attention to what the 76ers have done, just because it's really Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid. And Tobias Harris. Well, Tobias Harris is probably, to me, their most important player. And listen to me when I say this. Embiid is their most important player, but their X factor is Tobias Harris. If Tobias Harris plays up to the level that he can play at and has the opportunity, I think that they could be a favorite in the Eastern Conference. I think Tobias Harris is that good when he's in that role. He's a great third option. Now, do they have the firepower and the defense to be able to stop Brooklyn? That's the question. Miami, it's just been an up and down year for them. Jimmy Butler's been Jimmy Butler. Bam Adebayo has not really become the superstar that we thought he would be. And it's still early. Like, he still has time to develop into that. And so that's going to be interesting with Doc Rivers coaching that team in the playoffs. So the top three teams in the East plus Miami. And then another thing, too, someone made a good point about, and I think it was the Raised by Sports pod. I think it was them. And you can follow them on Twitter. They have a really dope podcast. But my thing is, you don't want to see Boston either in the play-in game or in the first round. And everyone's like, oh, they're the 8 seed. But 4 through 8 are separated by just a couple of games. And so Charlotte's a nice story, but they're going to miss LaMelo Ball. And like we said, we already talked about the Knicks. So you have Milwaukee, Philadelphia, Brooklyn. This isn't an order. So you have Milwaukee, Philadelphia, Brooklyn, Miami, Boston, New York, Charlotte, and then the rest of the teams in the league. If I'm missing somebody let me know. You can't because I'm not live, so that's kind of pointless anyways. But I know the Indiana Pacers are hanging around there. Technically, the Wizards are still in it. You've got Orlando's pretty much out of it. Cleveland's out of it. Oh, the Hawks. The Hawks have been really hot lately. I don't see them having enough. I think they give a team a trouble in the first round, but I think they get bounced in the first round. It's Trae Young and Bogdanovich and Clint Capella. That's a decent team. Rondo got out of there, so but Nate McMillan, he's the king of losing in the first round. And so, but the Hawks making the playoffs this year and losing in the first round is not a bad thing for that franchise. And then you see what they can do in the offseason. The Western Conference is nuts. So obviously the Jazz have the best record, and I'm going to get to them in a minute. But I think it's like the Jazz 1, and then it's like the Suns 2, Clippers, Nuggets, Lakers at 5, and then Portland and Dallas and San Antonio are all right there. So those are your 8. Then you got the play-in would be between Golden State, New Orleans are right there at like 9 and 10, and the Grizzlies. I think New Orleans is behind those teams, but the Grizzlies don't have enough. I don't believe in. I don't get to watch them play basketball. I like Ja Morant, but I just think that they're a non-factor. Portland's issue is going to be defense. I know they got Norman Powell, which makes them a little better. But if you have to play Enes Kanter any kind of minutes, he couldn't guard me. He probably could guard me, but you know what I mean. Carmelo Anthony doesn't play defense. Damian Lillard's undersized. You got C.J. McCollum, and that's a dangerous team with. And I know they don't have Gary Trent Jr. anymore. He actually played really well for them. But with Norman, like that's a team. And they got the slam dunk dude. I think it's Damon Jones, Jr. or whatever his name is. I don't know half these dudes' first names because there's so many new guys coming into the league. The Trailblazers are interesting. The Mavericks, biggest question, is KP going to be healthy? Is Tim Hardaway Jr. going to be consistent? Which he has for the most part. I don't really trust any of their other players. J.J. Redick should help them when he's healthy, but I don't think it's all about matchups once again. It's all about who Dallas gets in the first round, but they're a team you don't want to play in the first round. San Antonio, people are tripping on DeMar DeRozan. DeMar DeRozan is an all-time really good player in the NBA. He's not a Hall of Famer. He can go off for 30, but he's more of like a 22, 23 point a game scorer. He has upped his assists and become a better playmaker for that team, but the Spurs don't have any. I think the Spurs are a first-round bounce-out, even with Pop coaching that team. You got Lonnie Walker the 4th or 5th or whatever that number is. I'm pretty sure it's the 4th. You got DeJounte Murray. You got Derek White. I'm pretty sure is on that team still. And then you got DeMar DeRozan. Rudy Gay still there. Rudy Gay plays for the Spurs, right? I'm not tripping. Rudy Gay still plays for the Spurs because he used to get that dude used to get traded like every single year, and he's just a really good bench player. The Spurs aren't doing anything. The Pelicans are one of the most interesting teams that are just, and I know Zion's been out and then Lonzo Ball was out. I didn't realize that he had made like 100+ threes this year. He's shooting really well. The Pelicans are interesting. Zion, someone made a top 20 list of NBA players and didn't have Zion on it. Y'all realize that Zion Williamson is about to have the highest field goal percentage of anyone that shot over 15 shots in NBA history, right? Just so y'all know. And I know he doesn't rebound very well for being the position that he plays and his size, but he just now started missing a couple of games. He's been healthy all year. He's been everything and more that's been billed. And someone made a good point, and I think it was Chris Broussard, that they have to sit this team down and been like, everything goes to Zion. Brandon Ingram's an all-star. Lonzo Ball is their point guard. And they've got a lot of, like, the Alexander kid, and they've got Jackson Hayes. They've got a lot of really good young players. This is why they got J.J. Redick out of there and Drew Holiday out of there. And it's just, that team should be better than their record, for sure. The Nuggets getting Aaron Gordon, I think, I can't really call him a dark horse in the West because they made the Western Conference Finals last year, but they did have to come back from 3-1 to Utah and then 3-1 to the Clippers, and then they got down 3-1 to the Lakers, and yeah, the series was over. And so I think they were down 3-1 to the Lakers, if I'm not mistaken. I don't really remember that. Yeah, because it was 4-1, 4-1, 4-1, 4-2. Or maybe the Nuggets won 2 games that series. I don't remember. But my point is, Jokic defensively is going to be a problem for them. But with Michael Porter Jr. and Aaron Gordon now, and Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic, they have a good problem that any one of those guys can score for them late. But you really want that one guy that you trust late. And it's good to have more than one, but Jamal Murray hasn't really recaptured that playoff magic from last year, which is kind of what I'm going to get to when I talk about Utah. But you don't want to see them. You don't want to see Portland. And I think the Aaron Gordon pickup is great. Like, he's been way better so far as a Nugget. And I know they had Vucevic, and just Orlando's this weird team that had a bunch of young players, and everyone's like, oh, Fultz and Ross were hurt. Or Jonathan Isaac, I think, was the guy that was hurt. Yeah, Jonathan Isaac was out for the year, or out for a long time. And then, of course, Fultz got hurt. But that team, yeah, okay, they would have been the 8th team and got stomped by whoever the 1 seed was. And they may not even have won the play-in game or play-in games, depending on where they finished in the standings. So I never really bought the Magic as anything but a fun team that plays near Disney World. And so But Aaron Gordon, good for him. Oh, and I forgot to mention when I talked about, well, yeah, I mean, the Celtics or whatever. Everyone knows they have Jaylen Brown and Smart and Tatum, and they added Fournier from the Magic. But, yeah, Celtics, like, that's another coach that could be on his way out if they get bounced in the first round or lose in a play-in game. And so the Nuggets are really scary. I think they're well coached with Mike Malone. The Clippers, I don't care about them being number one in three-pointer and free throw and all that. I don't care. Get to the playoffs and don't choke. I don't care that Paul George is having a great year. Good for him. He's always been a really, really good player. The question is, what are you going to do in the playoffs, bro? Like, what are you going to do when the rubber meets the road? You and Kawhi, y'all got to redeem from last year. Yeah, they spanked the Lakers, who, listen, there's no point in even talking about the Lakers until LeBron, AD, and Drummond are all together. And I think that AD and LeBron already have chemistry with that team, and so that they're fine. Drummond will just plug in and be a rebound guy. And I'm not going to make predictions because I want to see what those two look like health-wise. Then you got Phoenix. Phoenix, to me, is a team that could lose in the first round or go on a run. I don't really know what to make of them. Of course, Chris Paul makes that whole thing go. Of course, there's an 18-wheeler pulling up in the parking lot to make more noise. I don't really know what to do with the Suns. I mean, Ayton has been kind of inconsistent. They have Dario Saric. Devin Booker's been Devin Booker, but not like super spectacular Devin Booker. Everyone's like, oh, he got snubbed from the All-Star game. He's going to score like 50 points a game. And and they've been good, don't get me wrong. And they have Mikal Bridges. And so the Suns are heading in the right direction with Monty Williams, CP3, but they're not a threat. And then we come to the Utah Jazz. And the thing is, are they going to, when teams have a 7-game series and can focus in on them, are they going to shoot this lights out? Or are they going to be like Budenholzer's Hawks and the Bucks, where it's like, oh, you have these great regular seasons, and then they don't mean anything because teams game plan and they just like, okay, is Jordan Clarkson going to do this in the playoffs? And I don't know the answer. Is Joe Ingles going to do this in the playoffs? That dude is so underrated. Donovan Mitchell was amazing, and the only reason we talked about Jamal Murray is because Jamal Murray won that series. Or the Nuggets won that series last year. Donovan Mitchell was just as good. But is Rudy Gobert, I mean, he's basically a catch and dunk guy down low. I mean, he got a little bit of an offensive game, but nothing that's going to terrify people. So I just sat there and talked for 18 minutes about the teams in the NBA, and we didn't even talk about the Chicago Bulls, who added Vucevic, even though they lost like 3 or 4 games in a row. They lost like 5 games in a row after that. Or maybe they lost 3 in a row and they had already lost 2. I don't remember. But the Bulls kind of fell off a little bit. And then that goes to beg the question of, like, Billy Donovan's worth as an NBA head coach. Yeah, he was great at Florida. But let's be real. Besides Kentucky, during the era that he was there weren't consistent great teams in the SEC. Tennessee's good some years, not great other years. LSU's up and down. Alabama sometimes had a team. Arkansas the same way. Back then, when Donovan was coaching in the SEC, now he had that senior core that won back-to-back national titles. Like, so you can't take that away from him. But what has Billy Donovan's impact been in the NBA? And if he has had one, like, let me know. I'm willing to be wrong on any of these topics. But you got to come at me with facts. You can't be like, you know what you're talking about, bro? Because, like, I'm just going to scroll, dude, because you didn't give me a reason why I was wrong. Like, I can be wrong. That's fine. It's not an issue. And so the NBA has been very exciting. And the reason the NBA is exciting is because you have a West, especially in the West, you have, so let's say all the teams are healthy going into the playoffs. So you got the Jazz, the Suns, the Clippers, the Lakers, the Nuggets, the Trailblazers, the Mavericks. Those 7 teams could all win a first-round series. Now, they can't all win it. Only four teams can win it. But all 7 of them are capable. And if the Spurs got to match up with the Suns, you're talking about one of the greatest coaches of all time. And what if DeMar DeRozan does go like 30 a game, DeMar DeRozan? Then we're talking about something totally different. I think the Grizzlies cannot win a first-round series. I don't think that the Warriors can win a first-round series unless, Steph would have to go nuts. And Oubre and Wiggins would have to, because I don't even think those dudes have a lot of playoff experience, do they? Talking about Oubre and Wiggins. Because Wiggins was in Minnesota. And then Oubre was with, Washington. So, they don't have great postseason experience. So, that, they haven't been there before. Not saying that it means they won't play well. Wiseman's a rookie. Clay's not coming back this season. So the Warriors, to me, it's okay, you want to see Steph in the playoffs because you want to see vintage Steph. But then again, teams are just going to, try to run him off the three-point line. Obviously, can't run Steph off the three-point line. But they're going to do everything in their power to make sure that dude does not beat them. But any of those other teams can win a playoff series. So I think legitimately, right now, and this is saying if LeBron and AD are healthy, the Lakers, the Nets, the Clippers, they do have Kawhi, who has a final. I know he has 2 finals MVPs, but he has one real finals MVP where he was the man, right? So he has 2, but we have one that we pay attention to, right? Andre Iguodala has a finals MVP. And LeBron torched him for every game except for one when he scored 20 in a game 4, right? When they were up 2-1 in 2015 against the Warriors. So Kawhi can really do it in the big moment. So I definitely think that the Lakers, the Clippers, the Sixers, because they have Doc Rivers and Joel Embiid. So you actually have a coach that I feel hasn't lost the team. I thought Brett Brown, not to say he lost the team, but I think that his voice just got stale and it was time for a different direction. Brett Brown should get trophies and medals and all that for sticking through the process and then coaching probably beyond his means and then dealing with Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons won't shoot and Joel Embiid is kind of a goofball, really, really good player though. And I mean that in a good way, right? Kind of sometimes Dwight Howard, you have to be like Dwight, okay, it's time to be serious now, which he did with the Lakers. And then, he's prone to do dumb stuff. And that's just his goofy personality. But this is high-stakes championship stuff. Milwaukee, if they figure out what to do when they build a wall around Giannis, could absolutely probably win the title. I want to say the Jazz, but we're talking about a team that is pretty much the same team they had last year. They got bounced in the first round by the Nuggets. So the West is all about matchups. Of course, the East is too. Yes, the Heat could get hot. I think teams kind of figure them out because Tyler Hero can't guard anybody. We'll see what Victor Oladipo we get. Do we get Oklahoma City Victor Oladipo and early Indiana Victor Oladipo, or we get post-injury Victor Oladipo? And don't sleep on the Boston Celtics. And I'll tell you why. Playoff experience. They've been to all those Eastern Conference Finals, and they keep saying they're babies. That's over. Tatum and Brown, they've been together. You got Kemba Walker, who I know has arthritic knees, but you don't need him to be the third best player on the team. You got Fournier coming off the bench. You got rid of Theus. You're now playing, they have the 2 Williams dudes. Grant Williams, which comes off the bench, and then they have the guy from Mississippi State. I can't remember his name, but they have him in the starting lineup. You got Marcus Smart, who's the glue to that team defensively. He's the personality of that team because you don't get a whole lot of personality from Brown and Tatum, which is fine. They're super, really good players on the verge of... Tatum's a star on the verge of being a superstar, and Jaylen Brown is... I'm not saying he's not a star, but it's almost like he's not a star because of his role, right? And because of the team he plays on. He has star capability, But they don't need him to be 27 a game, even though that's probably about what he's averaged. And Brad Stevens, I think he can coach. I just think that if things don't go well this postseason, like, you might think about saying, hey, Brad, like, it's been a good run, like, go get you a different job. Maybe he's not right for this team. I don't know. Like, it's because the NBA is so ring driven that you're really talking about every coach and player being judged on championships. Fair or not, it's what they're being judged on. It's unfortunate because Brad Stevens has been to like 3 of the last 4 Eastern Conference Finals, and it's like nobody cares. None of the media cares. Even though Doc Rivers went to 2 finals, he won one and lost the other one. So with Paul Pierce, KG, and Ray Allen, none of those guys in the Celtics are those guys. You have to find out if Jason Tatum has that take over a series mentality for a whole series. I think he has it in him, but is Brad the guy that's going to bring that out? And that's my fear with Utah. It's like, man, someone's get a 7-game series. If you shut down Donovan Mitchell and you guard the 3, what is Utah built to do? And yeah, they make 16 threes a game. But is that sustainable for a 7-game series? I don't know the answer to that question. I have no idea. So for people who saying the NBA, like, this is of all years is a more interesting NBA than it has been, because for 4 years it was for 4 years it was the Cavaliers and the Warriors. From 2011 until 2018, it was LeBron coming out of the East and whoever came out of the West. Oh, and by the way, that was Oklahoma City, the Spurs. The Mavericks that 1 year, right? So then it was Oklahoma City, and then it was the Spurs for 2 years. The Warriors went to the finals 5 years in a row. And then of course the Lakers went last year and played Miami. Now it's like, okay, now you have the Nets. I mean, you still have the same culprit, and Kevin Durant. So Kevin Durant could go to his 4th NBA Finals this year because he's 2-1. He got the 2 in Golden State. He lost the 1 in Oklahoma City. Kyrie could be going to his 4th NBA Finals. LeBron could be going to his 11th. James Harden could be going to his 2nd. Anthony Davis to his 2nd, right? And so, while the bottom of the East is really bad, it's still interesting. Like, they have guys that are interesting players. Like, even on the Cavaliers, right? That's my team. You got Colin Sexton. You got some guys that can hoop. But they're not going anywhere, and I just don't trust that front office. And I'm just really rambling because I haven't got to talk about the NBA, and I love the NBA. In case you didn't hear, Paul Pierce, on his son's birthday, allegedly decided he was going to shoot an IG live video with strippers in the background, and it looked like he was smoking weed. Now, I don't know, man, like, morality, whatever. Like, you could talk about whether or not you think smoking weed is good or bad. Like, it's probably not the best thing for you. As a Christian, I would say it alters your mind. But that's only the people inside the church, so we would hold that standard to. So Paul Pierce, but you have to be self-aware enough. Unless Paul Pierce just wanted to get fired. Because I saw on Twitter he got fired from ESPN, but I haven't verified that yet. So I'm not saying he did, but I heard that he did, but I haven't verified it, right? But so obviously you're putting this on IG Live. So it's on his IG, and he's talking into the camera. So it's not like someone like posted a video of him doing this without his knowledge, right? He put this out, and you work for ESPN, which is owned by Disney. You have to be cognizant of what that looks like to corporate sponsors, whether that's right or wrong. Like, I'm not here to debate that. Like, I personally don't care if Paul Pierce, who they say is married, but it's none of my business. But if Paul Pierce wants to have strippers and smoke some weed in a video, but there are consequences for your actions. And And because they have, like, these television shows are ratings driven, and they're also sponsor driven. Sponsors give money, sponsors don't like what you do, they pull their sponsorship dollars. And people are like, oh, but ESPN's got plenty of money. Well, I mean, all the networks lost a lot of money during the pandemic. Luckily, they had the Jordan doc, but they still missed out on all that revenue from the games being canceled. And so, oh, that's too bright. And so, like, if he wanted to get fired, cool. Like, you really could have just, I don't know how that works, and how, like, if you can just quit your job, like when you have a contract with a TV network, because I've never been on a TV network. I don't know how that works, I'm sure. But whatever. But if he wasn't trying to get fired, it's like, bro, what are you doing? Like, and I'm not here like, whatever. That's Paul Pierce's life. He can do what he wants. But that was what I was alluding to earlier about Paul Pierce and IG. Some quick notes. I want to shout out the Hard Hitting Sports Pod. Those guys are awesome. I listened to their show the other day. The 330, man, I'm going to butcher this. I might have to just tag some of these people. The Raised by Sports podcast, they're really good. The Point God podcast, I listen to your stuff. I listen to the Jack Vita show. He's really good. Check him out on Spotify or an Apple and all that. I listen to all my stuff on Spotify. I'm an Android guy. I don't have any Apple stuff. Not that I'm anti-Apple. I just like my Android stuff. So I'm not going to have iTunes and I'm not going to pay for iTunes and Spotify. Like, that's just ridiculous. So the Shooting the Ish pod, like, they're dope. The I-80 Sports, they're good. I like their stuff. The Girl Who Talks Sports, I listen to her show. Big Blue Avenue, I know he doesn't have a lot of followers, and I don't like to listen to a lot of, like, team directed stuff per se. That's just for me. I mean, I will listen to it. I enjoy it. And if I want to learn more about that team, I'm definitely, if I have questions about the Giants, I'm going to go to the Big Blue Avenue, because the guy really knew what he was talking about. I'm more of a big picture kind of guy. But both of those shows are really good. You got to check them out. Man, the Average Joe Sports Podcast, the Leisure Time Sports Podcast, or maybe it's just a Leisure Time pod. They're good. Check all these guys out. You can look them up on Twitter. Craft Brewed Sports, they're good. Sip of Sports, Girls Beer Sports, they're all good. So a lot of these podcasts, they've been doing a really good job. The Makeshift Managers Noontime Sports. So my Twitter is at jwill_sportsguy. So look me up and then go to my followers and go look at all these podcasts that I follow. And also go see the people that talk to me. Oh, Brody Talk Sports. It's Brody something. Look up for Brody. He's real dope. All the Arkansas Razorback content on there is pretty good. It's really good. My boy Primetime, he's really dope. So just go to my Twitter and just go look at all the people that I follow, and like the people. And so, like, here's the deal. So what I did is I recently, like yesterday, I tweeted all these podcasts. So go to like my tweets yesterday. I don't tweet a bunch every day, so it's easy to find. So go to my Twitter and look out all the tweets that I tweeted. Go look for that tweet, and I tagged like 17 of these podcasts. Go check them out. Find them on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, Anchor. I do all my stuff when I do my podcast on Anchor. And what I do is I record on my computer off Audacity, right? And so with my microphone and all that off my computer, that way I can pause and do whatever I need to do, right? And then I upload it to my email. I email it to myself, and then I get on my phone and I download it onto my phone temporarily, and then I import it into Anchor. And once I import it into Anchor and I put background music in there and I publish it, Anchor then sends it to Spotify, Apple, Castbox, Podbean, Google Podcasts. Google Podcasts is free. So you can go to Anchor, you can go to Google Podcasts, you can download Google Podcasts, listen to all these podcasts for free. that are on that platform. So Anchor will send it to Google, Apple, Spotify, Castbox, Podbean, Stitcher, I think. I'm not sure about that, but they send it to a bunch of places. So shout out to Anchor, man. Anchor is the bomb, bro. Like, thank goodness for Anchor, because it allows me to get on my podcast and get it out there. And so, like, I just ask people, they're like, because I have this hoodie and it says, ask me about my podcast, right? My dad got it for me for Christmas. Shout out Gray Williams, my pops. And so what I do is, like, people see that hoodie and they're like, oh, what's up with your podcast? And I'm like, hey, you listen to music? They're like, yeah, of course I listen to music. I'm like, all right, like, what you got? They're like, what do you mean? And I'm like, you got Spotify, you got Apple. And if they don't, I'm like, dude, download Google Podcasts. It's free. If you have an Android, I don't know how Apple works, but I'm sure you can download Google Podcasts on there from the Apple store. And then you can listen to my stuff for free, Daz and Timeout. Or if you got Spotify, type in Daz and Timeout. Also, type in Rehab Sports Guys. It's all of me and Ian and David Dillavue at Cursed Villain. It's all of our old podcasts. It's basically our catalog. And then I put some of that stuff on the Dads and Timeout page. So I've got like 35 episodes up on Spotify of the Dads and Timeout page, and I got like 75 to 100 of me, Ian, and David stuff. Some of it's Ian solo, some of it's my solo, some of it's three of us together, some of it's me and Ian, some of it's me and David, but it's all great content. And so just check that out. Like, and I know, like, it's really busy, and so, like, it took me a long time to get into these podcasts because I just got so busy. But I found me some time. I was able to listen to these podcasts. They're all great. So go to my Twitter, at jwill_sportsguy. Go to April the 4th, 2021, and look where I tweeted out all these podcasts. And then they have the information on their Twitter page. Follow them. Subscribe to their podcasts. And let them know how they sound. Like, don't be a jerk because, like, they sound good. We're all trying to, I don't know. I'm not going to speak for them. I don't know what the goal is, but we love talking sports in a friendly environment. And so I want to plug those guys. I wanted to plug Anchor. I'm not signed to a network. I do this by myself. Ian, at neon_sports guy, unless he's changed his at again. He gives me a lot of ideas for the podcast. He created the graphics for our logo, and then sometimes I'll shoot him a video and he'll edit it out and do stuff like that, and then he'll post it and preview it on Twitter. So anyways, I gotta run, but this has been Jay Will from the Dad and Time. This has been Jesse Williams, aka Jay Will, from the Dads and Timeout Sports Podcast. I hope you guys have a blessed day. Thanks for checking me out, and as always, peace out. God bless.